Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Community Redevelopment Agency regular meeting for April 1st, 2014. If we'll all rise to join in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Eloise Taylor.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bill Colombo.
Here.
Councilman Steve O'Neill.
Here.
Councilwoman Nancy Britton. Here. Councilman Terrence Rowe.
Here.
City Attorney Joseph Public. Please let the record show that he's absent. And City Manager Tom O'Neill.
Here.
First item is the approval of CRA minutes from October 8th, 2013 and October 22nd, 2013. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second, except that it's 2020, I'm sorry, second. Backed up.
Okay, you're good?
Yep.
Okay. Any corrections in the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Announcements, Mr. O'Neill.
Yes, I'm pleased to let you know of a recent development that has been completed by our IT staff, Tony Conley and Frankie Ellis. It's relative to the streaming videos on city council meetings and community redevelopment agency meetings. The meeting videos will now be accessible on mobile devices like smartphones and tablets. The video quality has been increased to include an HD stream, and a recording of the meeting will also be accessible immediately after the adjournment. The work that was done by Frankie and Tony was completed for a total cost of $195. What this means is anybody will be able to watch city council meetings that has accessibility to a computer for streaming video. So I wanted to let you know, and it works very well so far, and you may want to test it out or have somebody test it out when you get a chance.
Okay, any comments from council?
I'm just kind of curious as to what this is.
That is information on what's called a FERDAP grant. I laid that in front of you just a little while ago, and that is relative to money that could be available for the peer reconstruction, both peer reconstructions.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's terrific news, what they've been able to do with that, bringing that up to full resolution and the improvements. When I look at how much, do you know how much money it was Newport Richey just signed a contract for down there to
I can't tell you exactly,
Yeah.
but I did read it at one point. I've forgotten about what it was now. It was considerably more than that.
Considerably, yeah, like you know, to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. I mean,
Yes.
it really was. So I'm very glad to hear again. Those guys have really done a knock-up job around here when it comes to the computer systems that
Yeah,
we
they have.
compared to what they started with.
Their work is first rate.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have. Kudos to both of them.
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, I would just say the same thing. I know that I believe we even had a little bit of increase in their budget this year for the IT, and these guys have done very good work. There's no doubt about it.
Okay. All right, moving on to the agenda then.
Madam Mayor, general public.
Pardon me?
General public.
Nobody signed up.
Oh, nobody signed up.
Huh?
But
Right,
under an item,
right.
but nobody under general public. Okay.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is discussion of the anti-crime initiative.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to let you know that, as I've indicated in the packet, this appears on your agenda tonight as a CRA board at the request of Board Member Nancy Britton, and it's on for discussion. In essence, as I understand it, Ms. Britton wants to take an initiative relative to anti-crime in the city and is under the understanding that it would take some additional police overtime. I wanted to let you know, from my opinion, this does qualify as a community policing initiative, and funding is available in the CRA budget. It will not require an overall increase to the budget, but rather a transfer between line items in the budget. And with that, I'm through with my comments as I understand it. So, Council.
Nancy?
Okay. I don't know where to begin. Many years ago, we did our first Crime Watch march through the streets in Port Richey, and it became very valuable and proved to work in the city. And we've had some complaints, and there's been a lot of changes in the city, and I sat in front of Sheriff Naco, I want to say 2 weeks ago, at a meeting up in Hudson, where he talked about the crime rate and the things that are going on in the county. And it just, hearing what the citizens were saying, what I've been seeing, it was time for us to really start to do something. And so I contacted Leonard Lord because I felt as though he probably was the best person to have along with us at this anti-crime march that we had. And so we went out to the community, over to Limit Drive, and we really thought we were going to go through the entire city, but unfortunately we spent so much time in Limit Drive that we didn't get to the rest of the city. We did not take any police with us that evening, and it turned out to be one incredible evening. We had an opportunity, Councilman Colombo and the mayor were along. We had an opportunity with Leonard Lord's staff to go out and speak to some of the people at Limit Drive and find out what their issues were. We were able to actually help some of them. They have been issued eviction notices to leave the area and so on and so forth. So we were able to work with them and help them in some ways. But there are areas of town that we also feel, that I also feel, that we could benefit from having police along with us. Places where we have a lot of prostitution, places where we have a lot of people just loitering and drug dealing and things like that. So there are certain areas that police would come in handy. It was funny because when we were there and we got to chatting afterwards, you know, you look at a park like, what is it called, the Gateway, is that the name of it, Golfland. You look at this mobile home park that's caused so many problems, and the issues that are going on there. There's people living in the woods, and you look at that, and the only thing I could say at the end of the night was, shame on the city of Port Richey, shame on the city of Newport Richey for allowing areas to get like this. And so later on in the evening, I want to talk more about that. But it just, to me, if we as city would have been more proactive trying to keep these mobile units up to snuff, we wouldn't be here. But this has happened over 40 years easily. And it's happened all over. It's happened in Pasco County. It happens everywhere. I don't know if it's just lack of personnel to get out to all the different places. But I would really like to see us really step up the community program as far as what we're doing, what are we allowed? Like, for instance, as I'm driving here, you know, we still have dumpsters that are open, and there's no protection around them, so everybody has to look at dumpsters in some areas. And I know that we have rules against that. So anyway, I think that in the future, if we could do some more of this policing, it would really benefit the city. Because what we're going to be able to do is basically say, look, we understand that there's things going on. We understand that you're doing drugs and whatnot. But you know, we can't have you doing it here. We're just not going to tolerate it, and we have to be a no tolerance zone. I know that we have loitering rules, and you know, those need to be enforced. Trespassing laws that need to be enforced. I don't want it to be all, you know, where we go out and beat people up, because I think there's an opportunity to be able to help people too. And I just wanted tonight to just try and get some feedback from some of the council to see what your thoughts are. I really think that's, you know, setting a standard for property in the city of Port Richey, and really pushing our building officials to set that standard and stick with it is something that we can do now and set in place now, and set it in place hard, so that we don't have future webs and the future, you know, issues down the road. And with that, we can go back and forth, and I have a couple other things, but I'll let you guys chat.
Steve?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and chat a bit. It's such a big issue. This issue is certainly not peculiar to or only Port Richey. I mean, we're a very small dot, so to speak, on the West Pasco County Highway 19 corridor map. There is no issue that we're having in this city that isn't happening outside the city. It's happening in Holiday. It's happening in Newport Richey. It's happening in Port Richey. It's happening up a Hudson area all the way up to Arapika. What you've got, of course, is an area, like you said, that's probably, I don't know what time this area really started growing. You've been around here a lot longer than I have, but just as a resident of this particular area right here. But I mean, you know, this area built out in the, what, late 50s, come into 60s and 70s, you know, which in any area where you basically have areas being built out very rapidly at the same time, they all get old at the same, they all start aging at the same time. The buildings start getting older at the same time. You have developments up in the Hudson area, even many parts of what's called Port Richey, which of course is not incorporated Port Richey, where entire developments, which used to be beautiful, wonderful developments, are run down. It's sort of the nature of things. There has to be a coordinated effort, and that's what I'm kind of driving at right here. It can't just be Port Richey. We can't do it ourselves.
No,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, not to interrupt you, but Judy DeBella Thomas and I had talked, and she was going to try and attend this meeting, so she could be the representative for Newport Richey.
Right. And certainly, you know, Pasco County. I mean, we've got our own little section of 19 on the south side that's a jigsaw puzzle of Port Richey and Newport Richey. You know, it's shared amongst us. Where we go from here is hard to say. Pasco Economic Development Council always talks a pretty good line about you know, doing things over in West Pasco, but just like anything else, it takes money, and they don't have the money. Where we're going to go, I mean, from what I saw last night, again, most of these criminal problems you have are basically socioeconomic problems at their roots. They're the people themselves and the situations that those people are in. I mean, obviously there are people that are just flat out criminals, and that's just the way it is, and they need to be caught and they need to be locked up. There's other people that are just, they're stuck, you know, and they need help getting out.
Right.
And again, I don't know, we go back to the recommendation here in this memorandum about, you know, putting money towards community policing. I would ask the chief, or I'd ask you, what would we get for our $10,000 there? I mean, honestly, we're going to put, that's going to be translated to X amount of hours of somebody dedicated to some specific duty, I'm guessing.
Chief and I have discussed this, and obviously in its infancy, or the beginning of this initiative, it would be designed to have police accompaniment of the citizens that were participating in this. And I know the chief prepared some written materials and is prepared to speak with comments on that. Just as a closing remark from me, If you do decide to proceed with this, this is a one-time authorization,
Right.
and I would encourage you to relook at this at a period of time and determine whether or not it's effective or not. With that, maybe the chief has some comments to share.
Thank you. In your response, Mr. Colombo, with the $10,000 that we're looking at, it would give us roughly between 200 and 210, 220 hours of patrol time. Now, that is extra patrol time, not counting what the officers are already doing on the road as we speak. So we would pick up an extra 200 hours. Those 200 hours are at our disposal for street patrol, walking street patrols, which is something that is very dear to my heart. We try to do that as much as we can. The dynamics are, as I take an officer off of the patrol from his squad car, that limits my response times to other in-action calls. The city is broken down into 3 zones: east, west, and US Highway 19. And when we have a 3-man shift, that's how the city is staffed. One stays east, one stays west, and one stays on 19. And in case of a situation develops, then of course they back each other up. But to answer your question, you're looking at about 200 added hours of police activity. Now, Mr. Goldberg is not here, and I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that there's other issues here, as Ms. Britton brings up. A lot of the issues that we're having are not necessarily criminal issues. We're having a housing problem, we're having Blythe problems, we're having issues that, and I assure you, and I'm not here trying to defend myself or the department, but our prostitutes have left the area. We do have a contingency of homeless, and they are in the area because they receive vital resources from our city. So they're not going to leave too far because they need to be at that location every day for their meals. So they're not leaving, that being Salvation Army. So with the $10,000 would give me about another 200 to 220 hours of police patrol. If you'd like more info, more
No,
information.
that was pretty much, what I wanted to get a handle on.
That's where we're at the moment.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd love more time. I'd love to put more cops on the street. Our city deserves it. But without that funding, it's very hard for me to take those officers out of squad cars responding to calls for service, to take them out of that car and devote them to an area.
Right.
So,
Well, let me just clarify here, if I may, that when we did this before, the only time we used the man-hours was when we actually did these city policing events. So, that's when we used them the most, 2 or 3 hours here. So this many hours, in my mind, will go a long way. So, but just real quick on the Salvation Army, that's another sore spot with me, because Salvation Army is, they're here, they're helping people, and that's great. But they're bringing into the city a lot of issues that homes and whatnot. And at what point does the city say, look, Salvation Army, we are a small city. You're putting a big burden on us. How can you help us? I mean, that's something that we need to talk about, I think. Because I know they take donations in and whatnot, but you have to compare our police force, the fact that they're here in our city, and where are we going with this?
Well, and it's not that the Salvation Army's activities over many, many years haven't been admirable.
Well, but are they providing food, or are they helping us with the problems that they're
that's
bringing
what I was
also?
going to go on to say. It's part of the equation. I mean, there are hungry people, and hungry people need food, and food is part of the equation. And when you get that one part of the equation concentrated in our city, you know, we do in fact get, you know, the ancillary problems that go along with it, i.e. the folks are homeless. So you like the chief said, you know, if that's where dinner is, you're going to stay relatively close to dinner, and you're
Right,
going to
and
find
that's fine.
someplace.
The thing is, it's fine. It's just that I think what just recently, a man in the bushes at my neighbor's drinking alcohol. Another one at another neighbor's sitting on the property drinking alcohol. We have laws against that. And the other thing I talked to Newport Richie about as I bring this up, you know, I know that we have issues as far as, you know, taking people to jail. But I think, you know, when somebody's trespassing or somebody's drinking alcohol and, you know, loitering and whatnot, and we're not doing anything about it, it's not showing them that we're not going to tolerate it. So it may be something that we want to use some of those hours to be able to, you know, say for a period of so many weeks and say, okay, well, we're going to take these people and, you know, take them to jail because, you know, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. You know, if you want to come help and get help at the Salvation Army and have food and all that kind of thing, but you're not at liberty to sit in somebody's front yard and drink alcohol and you know, lay on the grass and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, it seems harmless, but some people are really freaked out by that.
Well, no,
you know?
it doesn't. I don't mean for me and Nancy to take over the conversation here, and
We're having a workshop here.
we're having, well, it's a meeting. It's not a workshop, but you know, it's true enough. The problem with that is, and I'll look back to the chief for this one, is that you know, when I hear you speak of foot patrols, you know, that to me is the sort of thing that would help that type of situation. You've got a policeman out walking a neighborhood and he's seeing these problems, he's addressing them. An awful lot of these problems, though, you know, it's a revolving door. I mean, you pick somebody up for loitering, and how long before they're back on the street, Chief? I mean, it's...
If I may. Yes, sir. The situation is Land O'Lakes Jail, and I'm not getting into politics with the sheriff's office, I can assure you that when an arrest can be made and should be made, it is made. The arrestee is then transported out to Land O'Lakes Jail. They may be there an hour, they may be there 8 hours, they may be there 12 hours, they may be there longer. When they're done, they're released from Land O'Lakes Jail, and they walk back home to here. So that's what we do. That's what cops do. We arrest people and we take them to jail. That's what I'm paid for. That's what you make me. That's what we're here to do. It indeed is frustrating at times, but that's what we do. Our citizens deserve to have our streets crime-free. The issue is, and one of the whimsical issues is I can't have a cop on every street.
Yeah.
So, nor am I saying that, you know, we're doing the best we can, but I believe we are doing the best we can. Our numbers are astronomical in arrests and other areas, and I didn't come prepared with all of my numbers, but can we do better? Sure. We can always do better. When we're busy with arrests at businesses, it takes us off the back streets. Now, our citizens deserve to see us on the back streets, absolutely. It's just when a business calls me and says, we've just arrested this individual for XYZ, I have to go. And therefore, I don't have 10 cops on a shift. So therefore, my east unit, my west unit, or my central unit is being pulled. It's a matter of mathematics.
Which
Well-
brings us to the time that we spend at Walmart.
Again, you know, I mean, Walmart is like any other business. If there's criminal activity there, that we have to react to it. And one has to also keep in mind that, you know, Walmart is a huge ad valorem payer, and they are also a huge part, well, they're big. they're bigger than I am. I don't know.
think Mr. O'Neill should
All right,
comment.
I'd like to make a couple points if I may intercede. We've had real problems in 3 mobile home parks. We've demolished 2 of them. And one a while ago, the second one on Grand and 19 more recently. And now we've got a third one that either is going to be rehabilitated or demolished, depending upon what the new owner does. So it seems to me one of the critical components of anything we do in this community policing is code enforcement. And a stepped-up presence to, which we have done in recent years, a stepped-up presence to deal with the derelict buildings and the uninhabitable residences, and that's important, and it's a legacy of years past and not necessarily the direction that we've gone in recent years. But I think the key is to keep up the vigilance on code enforcement. We may not have major issues with mobile home parks now because many of them have been eliminated, but still you've got housing areas where residences are need some help and need some code enforcement citations or upgrades. Secondly, with regard to the fund for additional police hours, I don't think it necessarily gives us the biggest bang for the buck if we simply have the police with us on any kind of marches or anti-crime things, because if there are issues out there with violations, you want the boots on the ground to be able to do their job, not being preceded by blaring megaphones announcing our presence. So, I think it's important in some of those areas to have, obviously, some police accompanying any efforts in the community, if deemed necessary. However, I wouldn't want to see that to be the sole allocation of the funds, because I think they could be used for other purposes. So, part of it's enforcement, but obviously, we know that in the community there are significant problems with crime, whether it's drugs or prostitution or petty theft or drinking in the street or whatever. But there's also terrible economic difficulties among some of the people that live in the blighted areas. They live there not because they choose to live there, but because it is sometimes the only place they can afford to live. Mm-hmm. And so I think any responsible government ought not have a single focus on the issue, but look to, in those areas where we can assist people in need and getting some help moving forward, then I think that's critical. And there are not a number of agencies that can assist with that. We have, in our own community, including the Smile Faith Foundation, which could provide all kinds of dental services to lots of people in need living in our city. But also the ministries in the community, which have all kinds of resources. So I think we ought to do a broad-based thing and make a real effort to do so.
Well, I think, and first of all, I want to thank Nancy, because I know she's spoken about this before, and we have the zero tolerance signs around the city. That was her effort, and the chief and a lot of those folks involved. So first, I'll say thank you. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I think you pretty much hit on it, and maybe Bill was saying the same thing, and I'm going to say the same thing. I'm not a big fan of just throwing out this money for 200 hours. I'll just make that known now. I think this battle has to be fought another way. I work in the medical business. I don't work in the policing business, but I'm sure the chief might have a few more things to say, but at least from what I'm hearing from a few people, and I know Nancy just kind of threw this number out there and we're reaching a little bit, and that's what we wanted to do, is have this conversation. Because it's important. It's important to the people out in our city. I think that we need to concentrate, and Nancy hit on it too, on that coordinated effort. Look, we do spend a lot of time at Walmart. I'd like to know how much time we spend at Walmart, because every time I'm there, I see a cop car. And I'm sure maybe you folks do too. And I'm up at this Walmart every couple weeks. Always a cop car. What do we really get for the $10,000? Not so much what we get, because you've answered that question, but in looking at how something's going to be measured, the bang for the buck, if you would, that's been thrown out here. I'm just not sure this gives us that bang. I think another conversation on how we move this forward with a coordinated effort would give us more bang for the buck. A long time ago, I remember coming here, Chief, and we had, it was about Crime Watch. I don't know where that ended up. I think we had folks, if I'm not mistaken, we might have had more folks from outside of our city come to that than we did in our own city. So, the effort was there, and that's, I think we had several people here, but unfortunately, there weren't a lot from Port Richey. Maybe some type of, commission on crime. I'm just reaching here a little bit, but, this coordinated effort, I think, is just so central to trying to help with this problem. I don't think we can ever just get rid of it altogether. As you said, prostitution's down, and that was a fight that went on for a while, and that's resolved. We have taken some of these mobile home parks out where some of this activity was certainly occurring.
But let's ask why the prostitution.
Hold on.
Okay.
Oh, well, there's many extensions to it, and I'll just leave it at that. I think a lot of you have pointed to some good points already, but I just don't think we can throw out funds. Look, we have a $1 million police budget right now. We already have. I was going to ask the chief. I could probably ask Pam. What are we paying in overtime right now? That's an important number. Pam might know that number, but I was just saying we're probably paying some overtime numbers right now. I would imagine. But in any case, and I know Terry's going to speak to this as well, and he'll have some fine points, is that there's a lot to this. We're not going to resolve this in this hour and a half we'll spend here, but it is important, and I think a lot of us have thrown a few good ideas out there already.
Yeah, I know.
Nancy, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to ask the question, when you mentioned prostitution is down, what is the justification for that? What have we done? Because this might be an answer to some of our problems.
I'm sorry, rephrase your question,
Well,
please.
just why is prostitution down? What has your police department done to make that
we
happen?
We arrest them. We take them to jail. And when we don't take them to jail, when we do come upon them walking the streets where they're not actively engaging in prostitution, when we speak to them, they are, let me say, they are encouraged to leave the area. And they've left the area. Can I tell you that they all have left and they're gone for good? No, ma'am, I can't tell you that. However, I will tell you that it is one of my main topics when we find a prostitution case, we arrest. What we've done, and I'm not going to go into too many details, is we do sting operations. We do reverse sting operations, where we put a female law enforcement officer out there, and we go after the Johns. That has been very successful for us in the past, and we will be doing that again very soon. But I can't tell you that they're all gone, but will tell you, and I will brag for a moment, they're not here anymore. Sad to say, and I don't mean to make fun of any other cities, but they went south, and they know to stay south.
Well, just in the 28 years I've been here, in 6 months' time, I've had 5 or 6 people in the neighborhood do all kinds of crazy things and see weird things happen. In my driveway, a guy with a 45 in his belt, falling off his bike on drugs and alcohol. In the last 6 months, it's been incredible. I mean, incredible. And that's the kind of stuff that is scaring me. It's really scaring me and everybody else in the community. And so if we took the prostitutes to jail, we got to start taking those people to jail. I know for a fact that 2 of those people weren't taken to jail, and they should have been, because they were trespassing. But I guess there's, things that you guys need to do as far as like, to prove that they were. And so I could be totally washed up on that one. But that's what I would like to see happen, so maybe we can get the same results that we got with prostitution.
Terry?
Well, you've touched on most of these topics that I would have addressed myself. The money, I don't think, is my issue. My issue would be we have to have a dynamic plan if we're going to put any money to this. It's got to be goal-oriented, and we have to have a very precise vision of what we want to accomplish. Some of the things I think that need to be done, I've talked to some of the officers about this, we need to purge the forest. That has to happen. I'm getting complaints from citizens being accosted at 2 o'clock in the morning by people coming out of the forest and asking for money. One of them is a female that lives alone. She was not very happy when that happened. Luckily, she was armed and had a license to carry, so she informed them that they needed to withdraw. This kind of thing on my street unsettles me, to say the least. But I've made and taken the time to walk into those places, and it's not pretty in there. And I invite you to take a officer with you at the least, or some type of protection, because when you get in there, it's no man's land. And what you'll see in there is unbelievable. And this is land that's owned by citizens that pay taxes to this town. They haven't built on it, but it's their land. And when you go in there, the amount of trash, debris, feces, food stuff, I can't describe it. You have to see it for yourself. And in talking to the ranger from the state park up the street, she's not happy about these people either, because I think they keep filtering into her park. She's done a pretty good job. I don't see too many places they've set up over there that they weren't throwing out. But there's places right along Walmart there where the trash is up to the top of the fence. And she said that's just unacceptable, and I agree with her. We've talked about Walmart before. I don't know, doesn't seem to be an answer there. It would be nice if we could find some kind of resolution with them, because it shouldn't be on our police completely to be taking care of all their problems over there. They should have their own policing. In my opinion, they are wealthy enough, I think they should. If they were going to be a good neighbor, I think they should. But I know if you're going to arrest someone, you have to have one of our officers there, so that's a problem too. But we do. I mean, when you talked about this, we have a perfect storm here. We had the methadone clinic, we've got Smile Faith, we're a magnet. We feed them, we bathe them, we clothe them, we do everything for them here. It's a magnet. They're going to come here because this is where they get the things they need. I think the solution is going to be multifaceted at the very least, and the economic has a lot to do with it. I remember it being anywhere near this bad when I first moved down here 10 years ago, but it is definitely bad now. And I know we're not the only ones, but I would like to move in a positive direction to start cleaning this thing up, because we're not going to get people to move into Port Richey if we are having a situation like this, people are not going to want to come in and invest in homes here when they have this kind of action going on, whether it be the drugs. And I know last week there was a gentleman that was found laying outside the hotel with his pants down, passed out, broad daylight. These kind of things are the things that are not going to want people to move in here. It may be an isolated incident to be that extreme, but we do have a lot of things going on. I drive through the city every day on my job. This week alone, I did see a gentleman go into the hotel over there with 2 prostitutes. Came from north of the river somewhere. But these things are still going on, and I don't think we're going to stop all of it. It's been going on for a long time. But I think if we were to kind of focus on the zero tolerance, we'll probably never get to zero tolerance, that's for sure. But that is the attitude I think we should take on. And then I think the citizens are going to have to help us. We can't do it by ourselves, but they're going to be afraid for retribution. If they call in, they have a problem, there should be some way that they can call in without having to let anybody know who they are or anything else. Just report these things as they see them, and let's get the word out to them that we are proactive and that we want to take this on. Like I say, it's a big problem. It's not going to be solved here tonight.
Okay, what's your pleasure? It seems like we have 2 alternatives, and that is to come back again and discuss a multifaceted plan to move forward, and reach out to other organizations in the community for their assistance, or the other alternative is to do some funding and move forward in the short run and see what kind of impact that we can make. Nancy?
I just have a quick plan. I just want you to all hear me out. First of all, I would like to know from Mr. O'Neill, how many affidavits do we have on file for trespassing in the city for property owners here?
I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat that?
How many
please?
affidavits do we have on file for trespassing in this community? I know that we went around the community and we got affidavits several years back that if somebody's trespassing on a property, whether or not they live here or not, we have affidavits on file that say arrest them and arrest them now. So I would like to say that we go there first to find out who has not given us affidavits, and we go after those affidavits. Because if we're having a problem in the woods with property that's vacant, we need to have an affidavit from the owner saying they're on there, they're staking a home and claim to my property, get them off and arrest them. Okay, so that's where we start. That's number 1. Number 2, we passed this, we used the money, but we used the money to help clean up the woods, because that was the same, and I can tell you, Mr. Colombo and the mayor both heard the same thing. There's people living in the woods, and so on and so forth. And if they're, these kind of things are happening, we need to police them and move them out, and then follow through with the continued daily practice in the community of arresting people if they're loitering. I see loitering all over the place on property that we have affidavits on file. And then ask Tom O'Neill to meet with Newport Richie and see if we can set up a time when somehow or another we can have some kind of meeting. I don't know how we're going to do that, if we have to do it one-on-one or how that's going to work, or if the city managers can talk together, how we can together as communities work together on this project. That's my plan. So I think we should go forward with the $10,000, at least get the woods cleaned up and get a start to this instead of sitting back for another 3 weeks and waiting for something to happen.
Well, you mentioned too about services that are being provided, and Terry hit on this, and Nancy did as well. that's a delicate balance, you know. How do we talk to those folks? I mean, these are services that are being provided, feeding people, you know, all these kinds of things. At the same time, it creates something else, and that might be an addition to what you've outlined already, which I like. I'm not a fan of throwing out this $10,000, but if we can come back and you know, pretty much talk about this multifaceted plan, which I think is we're starting to get to and incorporate some of these things, I think it's really going to help.
Well, I mean, I would say that if we've got affidavits from landowners already on file that give us the right to go in and clear out some woods, we certainly don't need to pass $10,000 to do that. We just find the affidavit and go ahead and do it. There's a second. If we don't have the affidavits, then we should approach those property owners, and I'm sure they would want to give it. I can't imagine any property owner that would not, knowing that was going on their property, would not want the police to clear that problem out for them.
Personally, I don't want the chief to send 2 or maybe even 3 officers in those woods. So therefore, I think that's why we need the extra money for that massive. Do you want to send 3 officers in the woods against, you know, how
I'm
many
not applying any.
people are living in there? I mean, there could be a lot of people in there.
Indeed, the trespass authorizations are given to any and all new business owners coming into the city through the building department. We have a plethora of trespass warnings on file now in the police department. I don't have a number, I'm sorry, but there's a lot of them. A lot of them, though, are individual homeowners for my address of 123 Main Street. If you find someone on my backyard, yes, I want them arrested. The issues we're having, as Ms. Britton brings out, and we all bring out, is these individuals are in the woods, and property ownership of these woods change every 6 months. I can tell you verbatim that I dealt with the property owner down at Limit in the wood section down there, dealt with them religiously for about a 6-month period before I could convince them to give us authorization for trespass. They did. They did the paperwork and mailed it back to us, and I have it on file, and a month later they sold the property. So we start over and over and over with new property owners. We do that on an ongoing basis now, and I mean, I can tell you these topics, but we need the issue. One of the issues is we go into the woods and we arrest John for trespassing with the property that we have been given by the owner to do that. And we've done that. We do that all the time. John is going to be taken to Land O'Lakes Jail, kept at Land O'Lakes Jail for X number of hours, days, and John walks back to the city and goes back into the woods. So we can keep arresting John over and over and over, and we have, and we do, and make no mistake, we will. It's an ongoing, and I hate this term, revolving door. John has no place else to go. Now, and I'm sorry that John has no place else to go, but I sure don't want John in my city trespassing on your property. So we arrest John. We arrest all of them. I'm just using a name. The dynamics of all of this is John's got nowhere to go except here for services that he gets in the immediate area. And I'm sorry that John is in that predicament, that he needs services and he's living in the woods. My dog lives better than some of these people. My job is to arrest them and enforce the laws of the state of Florida. Make no mistake, we do that 24 hours a day. John is gonna go to jail, and he's gonna walk back to the city of Port Richey and go back into the woods. And now we'll go in the woods again tomorrow and find John and take him back to jail. And we do that on a regular basis. Daily? No. I don't have the manpower for that to happen daily. It's an ongoing situation.
How much time does one of those round trips to Land O'Lakes cost your
Paperwork and
patrolman?
traveling about an hour and a half.
Okay.
Paperwork and traveling back and forth and the necessary paperwork and the actions that are needed to be taken,
Right.
about an hour and a half.
Right. That's actually
How many
better than I
people
thought
does
it
it
might
take
be.
to go in the woods was my question.
Oh, ma'am, I'll go in the woods with you right now. We can do that anytime you want, 24 hours a
I'm
day.
just- no,
The
I'm just saying to
safety
you-
aspect,
Yeah.
if I may, the safety aspect of that is, I mean, we're all armed and we're all trained and we're not afraid of the dark or the woods. But indeed, to go in and make a concentrated effort, it would take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of us to go in, have a transport vehicle, because if you go in and you start arresting 5, 10, 12 people, I would need a bus. I can get a bus from Pasco County, and we'll start making mass arrests. Not a problem. I don't have a problem with that at all. It's just you're not solving the problem.
It seems like a big key, and we've gone over it, and this is where balance comes in, and maybe the chief knows of other areas where this has put kind of a hit to it. If some of these services, quite frankly, are not provided, you know, look, if you can't eat, you're stealing the food. If you can't drink, you're stealing the drink. If you can't, I mean, if some of these things are gone,
Indeed.
that as you've indicated.
Yes, sir. What's happening is first of all, economy has obviously changed, and we're all aware of that.
Right.
We're having more and more individuals fall into this category. Up until 4 or 5 months ago, it would be a older male in the woods who has chosen to live that lifestyle for whatever reason. We're now finding women and children sleeping in the parking lot of Walmart in the back seat of their cars because they have no place else to go. You bring up the woods next to Walmart. 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I was in the woods myself with a couple of the officers doing just this. There was another woman with 2 teenagers, 2 young teenagers, living in the woods, and they had come over from, if I get the city correctly, Hialeah. They came here purposely because they were told this is the area to get services. So it's not just we're dealing with our homeless people who live in Port Richey or New Port Richey or even Hudson or Holiday. We're having people come to this area because it's the area to come to.
And word is going out, as he's indicated even. So, I mean, you know, if the word stops, they stop coming, I would think.
Yes, sir. I mean, the word is, if you come here and we find you and you're breaking the law, you're going to get arrested and taken to jail.
Mm-hmm.
And again, taken to jail, and again, taken to jail.
Yeah, revolving door.
Which we may have to do for a while.
And ma'am, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, until we get the word out that, you know what, if you come here for service, it's great, but, you know, you're not gonna disobey the rules. And in the meantime, I think Salvation Army, we probably ought to try and talk with them and say, look, here's our issues. How can you help us? How can we make this work? Food for thought.
What's your pleasure?
You know, I just think we're putting, you know, more on this, you know, plan, as Terry suggested too, and Nancy started, and all of us seem to have that common link. And I would like to put more in that services direction and learn more about, you know, the who, the where, and the when, et cetera, and have that be part of the focus as well. Look, I don't want anybody to starve, but you know, we all recognize that there's some components here that are part of this multifaceted package, and that's definitely near the top of the list.
If I may, a year or two ago, and I don't know the situation where it's at this moment, but a year or two ago, Pasco County and several of the churches had gotten together and had formed a homeless coalition. And I sat on that for over a year. The churches are still actively involved. Some of those issues are, the churches wanted you to bring these people to the church. I have an issue with that. I'm no disrespect to anybody, but I don't have time to shuttle people back and forth to Salvation Army or to churches. The county was addressing this. I don't want to say that it died because I don't know the dynamics of today, but I assure you that I will be making phone calls. This is not something that we've turned a blind eye to. I don't tell you every issue that we have, but yes, they're here. We deal with them to the best of our ability. Our crime rate numbers have dropped, and I can show you numbers. Our prostitution numbers have dropped, and I can show you that. Are we perfect? No. But I will reinitiate our contact with the county, with this homeless coalition, if they even still exist, for this topic. And I will assign an officer. I can't assign an officer full-time to this, but I will assign an officer to this to work on this on a daily basis to see what we can do. As far as I can tell you what our daily obligations are and our daily responsibilities are, is to enforce laws, make arrests. And we will continue to do that, make no mistake. It's just, they're coming back. They come back day after day after day. They have no place else to go. And we are actually having people come from out of the area to come here for services. Now, I'm proud that people are willing and wanting to come to Port Richey, but not for that category.
Right.
Well, I mean, I understand all that, Chief, and it really, it's sad that, people have to come that far for services and whatnot, and the fact that we have Salvation Army here and whatnot, but we also have citizens in this community that pay taxes, and frankly, I want to help the guy who's hurting as much as anybody. But I also want the citizens to recognize that they have a safe place to live. I want the citizens to know that, that are hardworking people that are getting up every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning and going to work, coming home, that they come home to a safe house, that they don't have to have people lingering in the woods, and they can feel free to walk down the streets. I don't feel that way anymore, and I think a lot of people don't feel that way, and I'm ready to do something about it, and I don't want to sit here and just hee-haw it back and forth. I think that we have to make movement on it. We have to go in some direction. Whether or not we spend money or not, as a group, as a community, we have to get the ball rolling. But I think the initial rousting people out of the woods and letting people know that we're paying attention, because look, when we did the web, the bottom line was they didn't want to be seen. And let's I'm going to tell you, 80% of them are probably, involved in drugs or doing something wrong. And that 80% does not want to be seen. When we start pointing fingers at them, they don't want to be seen. They will leave. And, some will come back, but this is a fight that we're going to have to fight for a while and keep it up until we get the word out. I mean, word travels fast on the streets, believe me. So.
Well, I mean, we've got our signs as gateway to the Gulf, and now from what the chief is saying, we're the gateway to special services that are being provided. And look, I understand these places need to provide food, they need to provide some shelter and showers, etc. But it's everybody here has said it already. Those are the people that need to come to this next CRA. If we're going to start on this multifaceted plan, we can't be the place that people want to come to, other than the gateway to the Gulf to buy a house or a business here.
If I may, one more time. Indeed, we have a mobile shower unit that was built by Pasco 100 of Pasco County. I'm sure all of you are familiar with that. This portable shower unit is in the city. It's used. It's in churches' parking lots. and it moves from church to church to church. They indeed offer the people in the woods to come out, go to church, and take showers. Please understand me, I'm not cold and I'm not vicious to anyone,
Yeah.
but after they take their shower, they go back into the woods.
Yeah.
So at least they're getting a shower in this portable trailer, and it's very nice, it's quite nice. But after they take their shower and they go to church and they get their loaf of bread or whatever they're getting, they go back into the woods, because they have no place else to go.
I mean, they're getting services, but how does that relate to, are these the same folks committing some crimes? Have there been a lot of complaints? As you mentioned, if we've got somebody at a hotel standing there naked in the front, as Terry indicated, that's certainly not going to work. I think we've touched on a lot here, and we spent a good hour, and we've got a couple, bridges to talk, or a couple of spots in the city to talk about too. But, I think this multifaceted plan obviously has a lot of extension arms, and certainly one of those at the top of my list is those folks offering these services. We've got to have a talk.
A brief comment. What I hear, as well as some of the concerns I share from being an observer and basically living right in the middle of a lot of areas and issues that we all face for a number of years. It may prove of benefit to you, the five of you, to hold a work session and publicize it and get some public input on this, on where they want to see the city focus its efforts. I mean, are they overly concerned or extremely concerned about homeless in the woods? US 19, among the many issues that we have, we all can identify a host of issues. I see them myself daily, and it may prove of some benefit to do that. We certainly have the resources right now to expend some overtime on any initiatives, but then moving forward into the future, what does the public think? Where do they really want to see us focus? And that may help you in making any long-term decisions on a multi-phased approach.
Agreed.
Well, before we close this subject down, I think we need to have some direction. And the first direction would be, we need to set up a meeting with the Salvation Army. I would like to do that. And I also want to set up a meeting with Walmart to see, Tom, didn't you talk to Walmart at one point to say, hey, you guys are killing us over here as far as policing?
Yes, I did.
And what happened with that meeting?
Nothing.
Well, let's bring it back up again. We got to go to Walmart because we're spending a lot of time there. The other thing too, and I know Councilman Colombo and myself and probably some others have, can we use some of our resources off the traffic tickets on 19 and get into our neighborhoods a little bit more for, the next 30 days or so?
To answer your first part of that, resources are already limited, guaranteed by the traffic citations. And I can assure you, ma'am, we are already on the back streets, and we will continue to be on the back
Okay,
streets.
I'm just thinking,
And,
I'm thinking out loud that might be a way to get the police,
If-
even more time, because I see, I'm sitting at the light at 19 and I
Right.
see us pulling people over for
If I may,
traffic.
real quick, Mr. City Manager, if I may. For the month of March, special patrols, there is designated locations within the city property. For example, Brasher, Waterfront, Nix, Olsner, Fishing Pier, Winslow, the well field, and the water plant. Those are designated areas that the officers have to check multiple times each shift. Those are what's called special patrols. For the month of March, those 7 locations were checked 819 times. In the month of February, those same locations were checked 716 times. And in the month of January, those locations were checked 921 times during the month. There's now another topic called an area check. An area check is a non-formal location, similar to the parks, which are formal locations. But the area checks are non-formal locations, but I'll rattle off a few of them for you. Candlelight Court, Harbor Isles, Harbor Point, Marina Palms, Ridge Road Center, Sand Pebbles, Suncoast Mobile Home Park, Unity Church. Those during school days. Those numbers for the month of March, not counting the special patrols of the parks, but just these random checks, which are called area checks, for the month of March, that was 848 times those locations were checked. For the month of February, it was 680 times those random locations throughout the city have been checked. For January, 844 times those random areas have been checked. So please have no doubt, please have no doubt that between the special patrols of the parks and the city property that are identified in our special patrols, and then the unspecified areas in the city as area checks, 1,667 in a month, 1,396 in a month, and 1,765 times in a month. I assure you, this city is being patrolled.
Chief, that's not what I'm trying to say,
Right.
and you're taking me totally wrong. What I'm trying to say is, I understand that we have a great police force, probably one of the best I've ever seen here in 28 years, honestly. These young kids are on top of it, and I really believe that. But what I'm saying is, how can we help? That's what I'm here for. What can we do? I'm making suggestions. Can we keep people off of 19 a little bit? Maybe we could do this.
Sure.
You know, this is what I'm trying to do, is make suggestions to see whether or not we can make, try and make some changes. Because I'm seeing things, everybody's seeing things, the economy's the pits, everybody's down.
All right, our citizens need to have protection, absolutely.
And this is what I'm trying to do. And I agree that our citizens need to be part of this and help out. But Chief, how many times in the past have we tried to put a community watch together and it just failed? Except for one time, 15 years ago, we had over 100 people show up at the church, at Unity Church on Pine Hill Road when we ran that program. And that was probably the most successful. But since then, nothing. I've advertised, people don't even come. So anyway, so Salvation Army and then the affidavits. If we can just make sure that we're on top of the affidavits, so that we have, if we have people that are on in those areas, to get them off. So at least we're doing something in the interim till we figure out.
Well, certainly
Well-
people who have voiced some concerns, who've complained, who've called, who've had some problems, the officers could suggest the affidavits, and that would be an important additional kind of commitment and aid. I hate to see us delay in addressing this because in some areas there is a pressing need to deal with the issue. And, we can study and micromanage and analyze things to death and never come up with a solution that will eradicate crime, because it isn't going to happen. But that said, I don't know that we're in a position to know what all the ingredients are for moving forward. And so go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to follow up on a couple of things that Chief brought up and see if we can't pursue those further. As you said, I know there used to be a homeless coalition or homeless group, and I too don't know the status of it. I know our former mayor was very much involved in it. I think a very good step is to let's follow up on what homeless organizations are out there right now. I think homelessness is the root of this, along with, obviously money, because people who don't have money don't have homes. I would really like to see us get together with, and this would be more on your side, Newport Richey and the county, because again, I don't see this as a problem that any one of us can solve on our own, especially from a municipal level. you know. So, I mean, let's see what's out there as far as what they're trying to do and how willing they are to get together with us and take a group approach to some of these things. But especially if there are any other affordable housing projects in the county or in the multi-county area that we can at least make contact with, and possibly work some sort of partnership to some degree. I mean, I remember one gentleman was speaking the other night about, Section 8 housing and how, they felt the best approach was to scatter people out. It was not to have a, what we would call, a Section 8 housing complex or something like that. We certainly don't want to go in that direction. But let's see who else is doing what they're doing out there, and let's get together with them. And let's follow up with, again, the affidavits and get our ducks in a row on that one, and start to make at least a visible impression.
Nancy's point, and I think it's a point well taken, is that this is an issue that we can focus on and add some urgency to, and I think as a community we need to. But we also need those good citizens to help us as well in a joint effort to move forward. And so whatever we can do to encourage people who are adversely affected to come and voice their suggestions and willingness to participate, I think it would be something that would be mutually beneficial.
Those people that have had complaints recently within the city, I don't know if we're able to contact them, Chief. I mean, if we had a list of them, if it would be okay for me to contact them and say, look, I understand that you've had some issues in the past. We're going to have a meeting. We'd love to have you attend and hear your.
If indeed they have left name and number, that will be in our system, but if they've called anonymously, then no, we won't have that.
Right.
But we can, with our new system, we've never tried this before, but we will research to see if we can select that group and get those numbers, but I'll have to check.
Okay, so.
Do we have a reverse call system here in the city?
No, ma'am.
Boy, would that be something that would be wonderful. Anyway.
Then we want to replace this on the agenda for the next meeting?
I'd like to come back in 2 weeks with some more information after we've talked to the Salvation Army and so on and so forth. And because I also, in 2 weeks, would like to discuss a grant program.
Okay, what date you looking at?
Well, it's April Fool's Day. And let's see, maybe the 21st or 22nd?
22nd, I think, is a city council meeting.
Wait a minute. Oh, hold on. Let's come in the 29th. 29th?
And what, is that a Tuesday?
I can't make the 29th.
You can't? Oh, you'll be on a cruise.
That's right. How about the 21st?
I'm not going to be here.
The council meeting the next night.
Right.
How about the 17th?
17th.
No, make it the 16th. That gives us 15 days.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm usually
You
out
can
of
get the ball
town
rolling in
those
15
days.
minutes. Hold on, let me just check. April 15th works.
We have a swearing-in ceremony on the 14th.
Hold on. How about the 16th? Wednesday, April 16th.
Wednesdays, and I'm going to be out of town.
Okay,
Should you look at May there, Britt?
Yeah, really, April's kind of busy. Really should be looking at that.
About the beginning of May.
I'm pushing the can down the road.
May 5 or 6.
6th of May is available.
What day?
The 6th of May.
Yeah,
That's
a
a month,
Tuesday.
that's 5 weeks from now.
Yes, ma'am.
It's Tuesday.
How about the 21st? Come 2 nights in a row, no?
I'm not here.
Oh.
Well, they probably need time to be talking all these services.
The 8th?
out.
drawing the straws here now.
What about, she mentioned the 5th or the 6th of May? That's a Monday or Tuesday. We got a
Okay.
city council meeting the 13th. How about Tuesday, May 6th?
I guess that's how we're gonna have to go. We're gonna have to go with it. In the meantime, I'll be all over things.
Is everybody good for that then?
Yeah,
Jerry?
7 PM,
As far as I know, it's okay.
6, 7
Tuesday,
p.m.?
the 6th.
May 6th, CRA.
And there are maybe additional agenda items on there anyway, probably not just.
Well, one of them I would like to be, if we can write this down, is a grant program for the paint up, fix up, just to see if we can help some of the people that are less fortunate in the city, to give them, you know, we talked about that in the past. I don't know where we went with that, but we need to look at that.
Can we tie that with usage numbers as well? For the most recent paint fix-up? In other words, we dropped it from 150 to 100, and how much was used? Because wasn't, I don't think.
We can get those numbers.
Pam's got it.
I've got it right here.
We have them
Oh.
available tonight.
Yeah.
We were gonna actually bring that up during the irrigation.
Oh, well, okay. I can wait till then. We're gonna
Okay.
talk about
Okay.
it.
All right.
Got the numbers lady right here.
All right, moving on to,
Can I ask just a very brief question for clarification? I think I heard that you want to meet on May 6th to discuss the same issue. In the interim between now and then, make contact with any homeless group coalition that may exist. Contact Newport Richey to find out what their efforts are. Contact Pasco County. Talk and discuss the possibilities of a group coordinated approach. See if there are any other organizations, and proceed with affidavit requests for vacant and wooded property.
And appointment with the Salvation Army.
Okay, I have that. Okay,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
And we need to take a look at code enforcement and what's going on. I mentioned dumpsters, and, you know, let's just make sure that they're continuing what they're doing, and
So we'll talk about code enforcement that night?
mhm.
Okay.
It seems like with those two, then, we're hitting the feeding and the bathing items that both Chief Brown and Terry mentioned as well. And you know, with mentioning the Salvation Army. I mean, we don't want to, that, you know, it's just a delicate balance. You certainly don't want to point the finger at these folks that do wonderful work.
Right.
But it's
No,
part
but
of
we
a
want to
different
talk to them and
conversation.
find out
I
in what
understand.
direction we could go
I'm-
in.
I'm with
I,
you.
you know, I have to add at this point, you keep bringing it up, I mean, Salvation Army, these different organizations are not-for-profit organizations. They have a mission, and they're gonna do what they're gonna do. I mean, they have a right to be where they are, they are zoned for where they are, and Salvation Army will come out and speak to us. But if they see their mission is feeding homeless and hungry people, they're not gonna stop for it, or
No,
not.
I'm not saying that.
Well, I mean, they're either not-
That's not my purpose in meeting with them. My purpose, because these people deal with this problem all the time. They are educated, just like Mr. Lord is, Leonard Lord.
Oh.
Having Leonard Lord with us the other night was wonderful. And so Leonard knows how to deal with them. We may be approaching this situation without any knowledge whatsoever, and I'm going there to learn, to find out what they can say to me, and how they can look at the city and say, okay, well, if these are the issues that you're having, they might work with us, and they might say, give me suggestions, and that's one of the reasons.
Okay.
I know they're not going away,
Okay.
believe me,
Yeah,
I know that.
Yeah, you know that. That's
Well,
what I'm
well, the
saying,
chief
yeah.
mentioned somebody came from Hialeah. Oh, okay, well, why'd they leave there? Were the showers cut off? Was the food cut off?
Well, see,
Is the
this is
Salvation Army
what I've
not over
heard.
there? I mean, they're just, you know, conversations to have, you know.
Exactly.
Um,
What's
'cause
going
I-
on within the Salvation Army, and why are they all coming here? Why is our population growing, and what can we do?
Exactly.
You know, those are the conversations we have to have.
okay? All right, let's move on. The next item is the Waterfront Park and Limestone Drive fishing piers. Mr. O'Neill.
Yes, thank you. This is a matter that we've discussed on two previous occasions, both in January and later last year. We have since received a draft structural report for the Limestone Park Fishing Pier. It's on for your review. And additionally, I've placed a copy in the packet of the previously received Waterfront Park Pier. Both piers are in a severely deteriorated condition. I have in front of you tonight, too, some information on what's called a FERDAP grant. Both of the piers are eligible for grant funding for either the repair or replacement. We certainly are in a position to apply for those grants. In my opinion, I'd like to see us move forward and make progress on that, and it's in front of you tonight for your direction.
Mayor,
Okay.
I would,
ahead,
I could start because I think, look, I know our last conversation, there were several components to this, to that, but to this, look, I think without grant funding, you've got, everybody saw these photographs. Everybody's seen some cost items. Look, we never got one channel dredged for a reason, money. Same reason that these won't be repaired if there's probably no grant funding, because there's no money. You're looking at an enormous amount. Just alone, almost $250,000 at Waterfront Park. We've talked about redoing that park, redoing restrooms and things of that sort. My only other question outside of that, I don't want to be the guy with the dynamite here, but my other question is, if they can't be rebuilt, how do they come down, and what is the cost there? That's part of another side of that conversation as well. I think it's just unfortunate. We've talked about the state and the limestone, pier, and I just can't see what the amount that would need to be done, and I'm emphasizing Waterfront Park, that without any grant funding, folks, where's it going to come from? How much do you want to spend? $250,000? You want to redo the cement there? That's even more money. So again, I just say without the grant, and we'll push for the grant, but we got 8 years out of the Waterfront Park, right? 8 years. That should have been 30 years. I mean, that's a joke. I mean, it's unfortunate, but same as the other. I was part of a group that painted that thing twice. It's a beautiful spot over there. Folks like to throw a little line in the water, but at what cost? At what cost?
Well, first of all, I on the piers, I think it's one of the enhancements in the community that becomes very important. So I'm not ready to abandon restoring them or finding a way to keep them. But cost obviously is something, and not only this, but there are other sources of revenue available. I think we need to aggressively pursue those in an effort to get funding to at least assist us in whatever repair that we need to make, or whatever we need to do. And I think that the money is the first point of focus in moving forward with both those projects.
Yeah, I would echo what the mayor just said. Obviously, the limestone pier project is one that has more potential than the Waterfront Park Pier project does without external help, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I've been that way since we first started getting numbers in on the Waterfront Park Pier. I mean, they were just big numbers, and they were numbers that were out of our reach, as far as I was concerned, without external funding. I'm wondering, under the recommendations for the structural condition report on Limestone Pier, how much would that cost? Do we have an estimate on that?
No, I don't have that yet.
Could we get an estimate
Yes, we
on
can.
that? Because that's the part where they basically are gonna, undeck it, look at the concrete, and see if it's worth redecking again. And I personally believe that those big old piles that have been down there for all those years can be worked on to a point to where they could structurally support a pier on the Limestone Pier project. I just, that dock, as compared to the other one, is still straight. and it's been around for many, 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 as far as I've heard, that bridge goes back to what, the 1940s or something like that, so I mean, yeah. Pardon me? Yeah, even before that, says Tammy. So, you know, the potential of being able to, you know, strip off the decking of that, rework those, you know, rework those piers and reframe that out into a new dock seems very plausible to me, but I would like to find out what it would take to get to that point, which is the next step.
Yes,
there.
what you have in front of you tonight is a draft report.
Exactly,
So,
exactly
you know,
right.
I
Right.
just wanted to get your reaction
Right.
and direction on it,
Yep.
and we definitely can do that.
And, you know, as far as pursuing any kind of grants on something like this, obviously, it's a direction to go.
I noticed in the reports that one of the recommendations for the waterfront park pier was that there was a possibility that it, you know, it could, with some minor repairs, it could be serviceable for a period of time. Do we know the number on just making it safe?
We had an estimate. What I would tell you is that we would need to specify exactly what would be required. We have an estimate. We haven't gone as far as preparing specific details on rebuilding the pier. I would think that in any case, we would want to rebuild it and save as much of the old pier as we possibly could. What I would tell you is that if you desire to do that, we could proceed further with some specific cost estimates and concept design without going to full-blown plans and specifications, if you decide you want to do that.
Well, maybe this answers my own question. On page 4 of the waterfront park structural survey, it said costs for renovations are difficult without detailed plans, but we anticipate would potentially cost $75,000 if the renovation is limited to stabilizing the variation in slopes but not eliminating them. So
Yes, that's just an estimate of the potential cost. There's been some deterioration since then. I happened to notice last time I went out on my boat, I looked in that direction and I saw several bracing members that had fallen due to settling of some of the pilings on the pier. So that's a number that you could just use for estimates. We would need to proceed further with some more detailed repair and rehabilitation concept design.
Okay. Anybody else?
Real quick,
Nancy.
are those, are both of those piers posted on the water side so that people, you know, after you're talking about the structure being so bad and you're seeing things happen, we have canoers and kayakers that go underneath that pier. Is it posted that it's unsafe? On the
I don't
water
believe
side?
they are on the water side.
Yeah,
They're-
I think we might want to do that. Just
We can do that.
yeah, that might be a good idea. Because you know, you got Gill Dog over there, people coming in and out. There's all kinds of people. They might go under there for get away from the sun or whatever. You know, we never know.
Yes, we can do that.
And the other question is would any of these, would the limestone pier, would that qualify for any type of historical grants, federal historical grants?
I doubt it, because it's been significantly altered. And most things that qualify for historical preservation grants require that they not be significantly altered.
All right.
What,
Jerry?
if any, CRA dollars have we put aside toward this project for this season? Do we have anything earmarked for it?
We not specifically insofar as line items, but we do have some miscellaneous dollars that are set aside in the CRA budget.
The little bit of research I've been able to do, the first thing I think we need to do in limestone is to do some checking on those concrete pier bases, because the parks have told me they had some and they found out that once they started checking them, they weren't going to hold up for very long. Even though they looked all right from the outside, the salt water just does a lot of things to the inside with the iron structure and that they have in there. So now they make a practice, and he says it doesn't cost that much. That's the first thing he does is check those concrete pier supports and find out what the condition of those are, and then you can go on from there. So that might be a good place to start there. And the other one, I mean, I was reading the same thing the mayor did. I would really like to see what it would take just to, it sounds to me like this pier is still usable, which was not the original input we had from another engineer. So I'm kind of confused on that. But if we could bring that one back up to service for a while we put our efforts forth on the limestone and get that back up and running, I would think there's a lot of lumber and everything else there that we could reuse it. Some of those pictures, that stuff looks pretty stable yet. I don't know for sure.
Are you referring to the limestone pier? Is that part of your discussion, or were you talking about the waterfront?
No, I was talking about the one on the park. Because
Okay.
if we can do a minimal amount to bring that up so people can use it, in the meantime, we can focus on the limestone, let them open that up and let them use that again once we secure these problems that he's talking about for the 75,000. And open that up so people can at least have use of it, and then focus on the other one, fall back into this at a later date.
Yeah, I would, excuse me, I'm sorry. I just would tell you, I would think there are considerable amounts of the waterfront park pier that could be reused. You know, the issues that we've seen there are in large part due to either settling of the pilings or the pilings being installed improperly up front. And so I think the specifics of that would be some of the cross member supports would need to be replaced, and the pilings would need to be reset in order to bring that back to a condition where it was structurally sound and being able to be opened by the public. Therein, you know, lies the basis for that approximate cost estimate. But we would need to get somebody in to help us design, you know, do some more investigative work. For example, I looked at the specifications on the original design, and those pilings are supposed to be set at a 10-foot depth, and I sincerely doubt that they were because of what happened at that pier and the settling that you see. So we would need to determine, you know, what happened, fix and repair and reinstall the ones that weren't ever installed properly, and then the pier could be rebuilt on top of that, and that would be my suggestion.
Well, what is the, do we have deadlines on the grants? I mean, I remember years ago we were at one of the League of Cities meetings, and we strolled into one of the workshops or something. They were having information, something or other regarding, you know, a lot of these grants, and they were minimal at that time. Now, either they've really gotten a lot better and there's a lot of money out there, or we're going to come back with the same discussion if we're not going to move forward with anything at Waterfront Park, and that conversation's kind of came and went, it seems like. I'd like to get back to talking a little bit about that. You know, I think we scared everybody away when it was said we're going to spend $2 million on a park, but that's not specifically the case. But I certainly wouldn't be a fan of spending $250,000 on a bridge that sits in a park in the condition that it's in. As far as the limestone, I think what I'm hearing is that if we get a very good determination on the very base of this structure, then there may be a move forward. And even if there, let's say, isn't any grant, and the chances of that, you know, I don't know. I'm just speaking from years back. If it is not, you know, then what is our cost moving forward? How much will it be? Obviously, the state's not interested in helping us out. How much is it going to be to basically redo that spot? When we talk about CRA dollars and what they're being used for, and you know, we're talking about pipes, we're talking about all kinds of things here. We're going to talk about some other things here shortly, but you know, to look at a particular bridge, look, I know it's been here for a long while, But, you know, at some point, a decision has to be made. Both of these locations have been closed for how long now? Quite a long time. You know, how long is it on this grant? When exactly would we find out something?
The window on the submission period for the FERDAP grant is the last 2 weeks in September.
Okay, so, you know.
And that
you're-
would be reviewed and a decision rendered on its approval or rejection within about 6 to 8 months.
As Terry indicated, you know, we've got two different, you know, thoughts about, you know, one said location in that, you know, is it even usable at this point? I mean, I guess we've addressed that. The answer was no. You know, but now we're looking at September. That's going to turn out to be the end of the year. So you're looking at both of these locations being closed. You know, at what point do we, you know, I guess we're going to wait until we hear about a grant. But, you know, as far as Waterfront Park, you know, that's the other, where do folks want to go? I mean, you know, I'm not in favor of spending $250,000 on that location. I just think it should be taken down. And how much
All
is
right,
that?
hang on, let me get some input from the public. Mr. Roth?
Carl Roth, 8031 Island Drive, Port Richey, Florida. I'm here on behalf of the Port Authority Board. This information, we wanted to make sure that we offered our assistance on reviewing any of this documentation and making sure it was compatible with any recommendations we had forthcoming before we invested any money on that. And we just got the information the same time you did, so we hadn't seen it previously. But if we can help in any way in providing you guidance on any of these things and along with our plans, we'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
Have you had any discussions on the Port Authority Board with regard to either of these piers?
Yes, we have.
And what is the inclination of the Port Authority Board in terms of their priority or demolition?
Well, one of the things that we were looking at is trying to enhance the traffic to the businesses around the waterfront. Whiskey River is impacted directly by the limestone pier. And then certainly Gill Dogs and the other areas in the central waterfront park area could receive benefit by having the pier at Waterfront Park. Associated with the old limestone bridge, there was debate at one time whether it was really ours or as the state. And the last that I recall that we were going to pursue and pressure the state real hard to actually get that demolished. One of the things associated with that is, A, it would really help the water flow because around that it's pretty much solid with oysters now. So there's actually eddies that go around between the Sun Cruise boat and that. So I think from a state standpoint, given some of the things they're doing with minimum flows on the rivers and whatnot, they would probably be inclined to do that. So what that does is give us a clean slate to really work with. And if you know the basin that's between the bridge and Whiskey River, one of the thoughts that we were looking at was extending the floating dockage so it would be flexible in storm-type conditions, also draw traffic into Whiskey River for additional boats. They are comparable to what we have on the Catches side for access to boats, so we could draw more boat traffic in, kayak traffic in. So that would address, give us a clean slate at Limestone. So we thought that might be a good approach. We haven't really vetted it out, and this is, you know, getting the information now about the pier. It seems even more significant that it's a toss-up whether we'll get anything out of it. Associated with the Waterfront Park Pier, we had talked about the potential to leverage that for maybe additional boat traffic and that type of thing. Depending on what the costs were, do some due diligence on what floating dockage would cost, more secure, more flexible to storm surge and those types of things, and then be able to have some options brought to council or the CRA on, hey, here are some options here, what might be more viable. For example, there are new dockage technologies out that allow sunlight to go through the docks and stuff, so seagrass things would be helped by that sunlight versus having decking. So we think that if we can bring that forward to the state, that'll help us on any dredging issues that we decide to pursue, because we're looking at this in a broader basis, helping water flows in the river and we can kind of come up with a whole package that might be more acceptable, and we might be able to get more grants, because if we help water flow in the river, we might be able to get some environmental groups and whatnot. I've been currently having some discussions with Nestle Waters North America. They're initiating some efforts on upward river and spring sheds, and you know that's in the news at the state level. So we think that if we can get some of these things pulled together, we might be able to source additional funds in maybe a shorter time, not only on state or federal, but also on commercial.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, anything else from council on this?
Yeah, real quick,
It-
I appreciate that, Mr. Roth, because some of those ideas I think are really good. And I like the fact that, you know, right there where the pier, the limestone pier is, there's some things going on there in the water. That's definite, because I'm kayaking through there, and it can get a little tough in there. And so I'd be more apt to listen to, you know, what you all come up with.
Yeah, I would too, because I think, I mean, I'm not speaking for Carl, but it would seem like the, you know, obviously demolition is part of the discussion in favor of some of, you know, what we're really looking at. Again, why put $250,000 into a pier that was built bad to start with? What are we going to expect next? You know, I think when, you know, and I think we'd heard some of this before in talking about not so much the water flow, but, and I understand that issue, that's a good point, but just a clean slate in general to allow for some of what may be some extended use later is a good conversation. But not repairing what's already there, I don't think, or certainly building a new pier. I'm not in favor personally.
Okay, do you wish to give us some direction on, in terms of both those projects?
Well, you know, we're in a tight spot because I think that, I mean, as far as waterfront, I mean, I myself, my decision's made. I can't see moving forward on that. I just don't see that being a cost-effective site. On limestone, it very well could be, as Terry indicated, you know, that underneath structure. Obviously, we need to know more, you know, as Tom indicated as well. You know, this is going to be a while. How much is that going to cost? And also, if we just have to build up that top portion, you know, that's another amount. But I'll just say I'm in favor of not really waiting until the September
Bill?
period anyway.
Well, what I was going to say is what Tom and I had already discussed, or my question to Tom was to come back to us on limestone with what it would take to implement the recommendations within this report. And the recommendations is basically what Terry was saying. They're going to take cores of the concrete piles, and they're going to evaluate the underlying structure. So my question to Tom was, how much is it going to cost to implement the recommendation portion of this? If it's not too much, then it is worth doing, because then we could do a deck over and basically have limestone pier back. So that was the question we had. That's the conversation we had before. And that's where my thing with you was that not let's do it, at least let's find out what it takes to implement these recommendations. Now, in the case of, excuse me, the Waterfront Park Pier, yeah, both the engineering reports had a repair option. The repair option on the last report was a lot higher than this repair option is. Yeah, I think it was, do you recall what it was? It was one of those ones where it was like 180 to repair it and 220 to replace it or something like that. It was one of those numbers. It was like, why would you ever replace it and repair it for 180 and you know, not replace it for 220? Not saying we really got the money to do either one, but so what we've got here is essentially two different companies giving us two different figures on what a repair option is. Obviously, a $75,000 option is a lot more palatable than whatever the other number was, and I don't recall what it was right now, but it was a much higher number than that.
Well, the virtue of limestone is it's a much shorter structure and than the Waterfront Park Pier, which goes on forever. So, you know, just from a cost standpoint, limestone is going to be less expensive to deal with than the waterfront. So I think, having said that, and knowing that there are some monies potentially available, if we can apply, get some tough, some hard numbers, and then see what's out there for maybe some sharing of costs, that would go a long ways to making a final determination of what we want to do where.
Right.
All right?
Yeah.
Anything else before we move on?
Well, those two piers have been closed for quite a while, and I would really like to get moving at least in some kind of positive direction. I would like to make a motion that we instruct the city manager to move forward to check, to have the engineering check on those footers and find out what condition they are. Let's find out if we have anything to build on at all. And I don't think that's going to require that much money from what they were telling me, just to have those checked. And at least we'd know if we have solid footing to build on the rest of the pier.
You're talking limestone, right?
Right,
Okay.
Okay,
What about waterfront?
not waterfront.
I've got a
You have a-
motion.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Only that you're basically giving direction. I mean, we don't know what that's gonna cost. I mean.
All right.
The basic thing I was talking to Tom about was getting the recommendations, which are spelled out in this report, that essentially do what you're saying, was to find out how much it was gonna cost to do that. Which are basically, what we're basically doing now is giving carte blanche and saying, find out what those footers. I don't know how much that costs. Tom, do you know?
No, I don't.
So, I mean, it's like, I can't say to you, yeah, that ought to be a $1,000 project, which to my mind it probably ought to be, but I don't know.
Yeah, from what I understand, they don't have to check every one either. They
Yeah.
do a
Yeah.
random check.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah,
of them
and
are
again, I
age
mean,
at the same rate.
given the nature of this particular pier, where those concrete pilings are very short and they're very fat, so, one would assume.
Well,
But
I'd
I
be
don't
happy to
know.
amend my motion to state that we would like him to pursue a appraisal on that test.
On the recommendations, yeah.
Pursue a finalized cost estimate is basically what I think you're saying. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion and
Well,
a
that's a,
second.
that's a pretty significantly
Okay.
changed motion. I
Anybody
think.
from the audience wishing to speak to this? All right.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
I wanted to ask, I didn't know if Terry had mentioned anything in regards to waterfront. Did you?
No, he strictly was.
Are we keeping the original second, since he amended it quite a bit?
All right, I've got an amended motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Okay, before we get into that, maybe we better take care of this motion.
Yeah.
Well, you've already got a motion
We got a
second, unless
motion
you
and a
want to,
second.
amend it again. I mean,
We got a motion and a second.
Yeah,
He wants to get rid of this before he goes back to waterfront. I was
A
interested in.
motion
what
and a
he had to
second.
say.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Anything?
Amendments, Madam Mayor?
I think he was going to comment on waterfront. Were you going to comment?
Well,
Terry?
I already opened it for discussion.
Oh, that's true.
Not sure if there was gonna be a comment on waterfront. Was
Yeah.
that included in the motion or not?
No.
No, I thought he might answer it afterwards as
Okay.
part of a separate, because he wanted to get rid of the motion.
Okay.
I'm just interested, I think everybody's spoken on it, but I hadn't heard what Terry had to say on waterfront. I was interested
All right,
if
so
there was a
anything
comment.
else?
Not unless we're,
You can do
We're
another
gonna-
motion,
pardon?
You can do another motion.
Yeah, we did the motion on limestone,
Correct.
but
Yeah,
waterfront still.
That's all you want to make? Okay. All right. Go ahead, come on up and you're good?
I'm good as long as it doesn't
Okay.
involve waterfront.
Okay, all right.
Will we be bringing that up as part of our next meeting then, that we're going to make some determinations on waterfront? Because that really hasn't been answered at all.
Put it on the
Well,
agenda
we can
again,
put
or
on
we've
the-
got some answers then we
Okay.
can.
I
sure.
mean,
For the
I would just say,
agenda on May
we've
6th.
agended it a number
Bill?
of times. I'm sorry, madam. Go ahead.
We're going to put this on the agenda for the May 6th meeting. Thanks. All right. Let's move on to the third issue, which is the water conservation devices. Mr. O'Neill.
Yes, this ties in with some discussions that we had over the last 2 months regarding water conservation and irrigation. There is an opportunity for the city to help residents fund water conservation devices, moisture sensors, and rainfall sensors that effectively would turn off irrigation systems if they were not needed. They're relatively inexpensive. Most of the ones that I looked at, the actual raw cost for the device was less than $100, and I would anticipate $200 to $300 installation fee. Most are wireless in today's world and are rated for service in residential and commercial usage. This is on the agenda to see if you wanted to expand your Paint Up Fix Up grants to help people fund these water conservation devices. I wanted to mention long-term, there is grant money available for this from the Southwest Florida Water Management District. We would have to apply through the next funding cycle, and if we did that, the funding wouldn't be available until July of next year. But now we could fund this with CRA money as an eligible expenditure, and it's on the agenda for your consideration and authorization if you decide to proceed.
I've had a question. Pam, from the paint fix-up, where are we on how much has been used, how much is left?
We did budget $100,000 for this year for the community grant program. We're right at midpoint of our year, and we have paid out $51,500, and we have $48,500 remaining.
Okay, so, and this runs to when again, October?
The end of September, yes.
So the end of September, 48,000. As Tom indicated, a lot of these devices, this would be less than $500. Let's say someone takes advantage of this. Is there 50% then? Is that how this would essentially work?
Well, that's what I'm anticipating that you might consider. The remainder of the Paint Up Fix Up grant program helps residents fund various items with 50% funding up to a maximum of $2,000 expended by the city.
Okay, now I know Saul's not here. We have about 165 irrigation as far as our number. I guess my point is I would certainly like to, incorporate part of this as our CRA, but how much? Do we want to set up $10,000? Do we want, how, I'll be interested what y'all have to say, but you know
Well,
where
I
I'm
think it
coming
ought to
from.
work just as the rest of the projects has worked. It's on a first come, first served basis. If somebody wants to do this and there's money available, I think we ought to fund it. If you think it's a worthwhile thing to do, and it doesn't apply just to the people who've got irrigation meters, but anybody who's got irrigation system that would benefit from this. That's my position on it. Anybody else?
So we need a resolution to amend the CRA to include this? Is that what would be?
Yes, if you direct us to do so, we would prepare a resolution that you could consider at an upcoming meeting, expanding your Paint Up Fix Up grant program to include helping and providing funding assistance for these devices.
This would be open, first come, first serve, but no specific dollar amount, knowing that there's 48,000 in there today, but,
Right.
it might not be
And,
tomorrow. Okay.
And 10 people may use it, or there may be more, and if the money is gone for other projects, then they become eligible next year if we get other monies, or for example, the Swift Mud grants could be available next year, and next year the fix-up, the paint fix-up thing fund could be available next year unless people wanted to go ahead and do it on their own volition.
Do we know some of the companies that are actually providing this type of?
Most irrigation contractors install these.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay?
Would we be doing it following the same procedure, whereas they would have to pre-apply and use a contractor who we knew where they were and
Yes.
all that? So basically follow the same procedures that the other.
Yes.
Yeah. 50/50. It's what we've always done.
Yep. Quick question. Are we putting that in the newsletter, the paint up, fix up, every time we send the newsletter out?
It has been in the newsletter.
Well, We might
it-
want to
it-
have like, some like little column that says, please remember and whatnot. And for the benefit of the only person in our audience, this also is available to commercial
Yes.
It's a
people
diff-
in our community. So if you spend $2,000 on a project, apply for the Paint Up Fix Up program, and then there's $2,000 paid. So if the project's $4,000, $2,000 comes from the city, $2,000 comes from you,
Even in the businesses.
even the businesses.
I think there's some other
There,
different.
the paint up fix up is for residential, but there are commercial grants that have a
That's what
higher
I-
threshold.
Yeah,
But
but
don't they
it,
work the same way as the Paint Up Fix Up?
well,
Yes.
I think they cover other things like facades and things that.
Right, right.
It's 50% funding, but
Signs,
the
yeah.
threshold is a higher amount.
Okay.
Well, I kind of looked at this a little differently, because I was, with the amount that this is going to cost, if the people did it themselves, I would imagine most of the people that were able to put this in have enough money to pay for this device. They would save enough money just by doing it themselves to pay for the device. So I'd rather use our CRA dollars for something else besides this.
Okay. Do I have a motion to add this to, for us to move forward with a resolution?
Motion to
just-
approve.
Motion to,
Motion to move forward with the
instruct the city
resolution.
manager to draft a resolution. Do I have a second?
A second for discussion.
Okay? All right. Further discussion?
I think I take Terry's point because, in looking at this, this is, as Tom indicated, a best guess is $500.
Or less. I would say that's an upper end.
Or less. Look, I live in Sand Pebble. They're going to be interested in this particular type of device, but, I don't have an idea, based on property size, et cetera, how many are going to be needed. In other words, I think there's more information to come forward. On the one hand, it may be appropriate that, yeah, this is going to be saving them, a lot of money, and it will. Obviously, it will save our area a lot of money. On the other hand, how much of this is going to be needed when you consider, let's just take Sand Pebble, for instance. We've got 4 different phases there, and each phase is going to incorporate how many of these particular devices to move forward. And I understand we have about 360 odd doors over there, and folks obviously that more than likely can afford under our PUD, if you would, this particular device. But again, my question, and I don't know the answer yet, how many of these are needed at specific locations. So that's why I set this for discussion, because it might be a little bit early to say, yes, I would certainly be in favor of adding this to the paint fix-up.
Well, on the fix-up, paint-up grants, we haven't set a guideline or determination of what you can use it for. It's the people that have a project in mind and can use it. The real question is not how many out there are needing it, but really, is it a worthwhile thing to do, or do we want to keep the money allocated to where we have it now? I think that's the central question.
Well, how much wasn't, how much of this previously from the 150 was not used? Before we had set that, and I don't think we've ever had a year in the, I want to say 3+ years maybe that we've offered it, where all of these funds have been used, on the
Right,
other
and
hand.
I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but we've never used everything that we have budgeted.
Okay, so give them other options. Real quick.
Well, I mean, you are technically online, though, this year to pretty much, you're about halfway through the
We're
year, and
about
we're about
halfway
halfway
through.
through the money. So, I mean,
Yeah,
you
right.
are technically on track to be closer to running out of money. I mean, I think we lowered the threshold simply because we weren't doing that much.
Correct,
Yeah.
but the time that it takes once someone applies for the grant, because you have to apply before you have the work done, then you have the work done and then get reimbursed. Some of the people that might be applying towards the last 3 months of the year will actually be paid out in next year's allocation.
Okay.
The point I want to make is, and I'm surprised nobody said anything about this, we just had a rate increase. We just had to lower our rate because we had issues on the irrigation water. These people have put irrigation systems in that they paid good money for. Now we're gonna deny them the opportunity to do this, and we're gonna nitpick about whether or not we're putting it as a program? Shame on you.
Well, it's a good point, because I think, again, I'll speak for some folks that I know and that I've talked with who basically have turned theirs off. Now, we all know, we've been here long enough in Florida, that, eventually we're going to get a dry spell. And when we do, then the conversation is going to be, look, I've got to replace trees, I got to replace lawn, I got to, et cetera. And I guess my point for extending this conversation is, one, to find out how much money was left. I'm not sure how many people will take advantage of this, but I'll just say, I guess, with the information that I've gotten so far, I'd certainly be in favor.
To address Councilman Rowe's concern, we could make this available also to the homeowner that decides to do work himself. In other words, if he went out, bought the material, and had it inspected by the city and it was functional and, went through all the procedures, and for example, if he spent $100 for material, we could make that partial funding assistance available. In any event, I would tell you that I would look, if as a CRA, toward this being the seed money to start this. Next year, I'm confident that we could get SwiftMud money, but we have this issue now that we're dealing with of trying to help people conserve water and help people lower their utility bills. That's the purpose of putting it on the agenda. And so we can, if you decide to proceed, we could word the resolution that way to incorporate the homeowner.
Is there any reason, Tom, that through a resolution, we could limit the allocation from the money available? That is, set a limit to see what kind of use we have, and knowing that it may start the ball rolling for the use of SwiftMud grants in the future.
Sure. You could set it wherever you want. I would suggest setting it for at least $5,000, and then if we had a flood of applications, we could always come back and reconsider what you allocated.
Personally, I think it's a good thing to do, given in light of everything we've discussed for months on end about the irrigation rates and trying to work in whatever direction we can to lessen bills. But this just simply makes sense. If you got the water, if the ground is wet and doesn't need to be watered, then it saves everybody, the city from having to allocate and the people having to pay.
I wanted to mention, I'll be very brief, I looked at a lot of websites, and the closest municipality that I can see that does this is the city of St. Petersburg. They provide funding assistance to irrigation customers and help their residents save water. They have a big water conservation program. And this is another element of what would be considered our water conservation program with the district, which I feel we're obligated to do.
Okay. I just have a comment, but we could go ahead and finish this vote if we'd like to first before we.
All right. So if I can have a motion to instruct the city to go forward, the city manager go forward with a resolution allowing the use of irrigation sensors limited to $5,000 for this year's budget.
Motion.
Okay,
To approve.
second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do you want to speak to this? Okay. Any further discussion?
Can I ask one question? Would
Sure.
you like to also incorporate language that allows a homeowner, a do-it-yourselfer, if you will,
Oh,
to get
absolutely.
reimbursement?
Yes, including a homeowner that is able to install on their own, we should reimburse also.
But
Okay,
it's-
assuming that it meets the,
and it
meets
must be
the
inspected.
approval.
Yeah.
So we have an amended motion. We got a second? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Passes.
Okay.
All right.
Could I just bring something up real quick on that subject?
Uh-huh.
On May 6th, could we just put the paint up, fix up back on our,
Bless you.
back on our agenda? Because I've always liked the idea, and thank you, Terry, for bringing that up, as far as the homeowner. Look, you got somebody out there, and I know I've been in the same position where there's a lot of things I can do on my own. And so if I'm willing to do projects on my own and whatnot, I can get a lot more done for the amount allotted, because you're allotted $2,000. So if you spend $4,000 on a project, you're only going to get $2,000. But I can get more bang for my buck if I'm doing the project, because I'm not paying all those labor costs. Correct? I would really like to bring that back and have a discussion with you all and see if you all are maybe in favor of loosening up the rules and giving people the opportunity to do some more of these projects on their own.
Okay.
Yeah. fine.
We'll add that to the agenda for next time. Is there anything further? All right. We stand adjourned.
We have a raise score?
100 to nothing.
Oh, the next one will be like 3 hours too.